Let's call the meeting to order. Teresa, would you call the roll, please?
Joyce Lynn,
Here.
Gordon,
Here.
John,
Here.
Michael,
Here.
Lori,
Here.
Yummy,
Here.
Brent,
Here.
Noel,
Here.
Rita,
Here.
Susan, Michelle.
Here.
Thank you. Ron, Susan. Okay, except for Susan.
Quorum. The first matter is our approval of the agenda, so I have to entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Thank you. Joyce, second? Second?
Second.
Thank you. Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And abstained. Thank you. Next matter is approval of our consent agenda that includes the minutes and the summary of our expenses. I did notice one thing that we might take a peek at. At the bottom page, we had Brent identified as offering and seconding a motion, but subject to clarifying that.
I have one item. On the finance report, there's a comment about the budget. If the budget is not approved, the preliminary budget will be the final budget. That was a discussion item, and I think that was to also say the finance committee will follow up on that or take that matter up back at the committee level. That's just a question. And the fact the budget, but that was not a definitive conclusive statement.
Okay.
In terms of the question on number 7, that's because the motion came as a recommendation from the committee. So my guess is that this is probably just a glitch in the software, which is why it's showing that Brent proposed and seconded. So because a recommendation doesn't require a second. So
Because I have to put someone there. I have to put a name there.
you have to put a name.
Okay, thanks.
But Gordon will make that adjustment.
So if we could have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Yeah, move to.
Second.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're abstaining. Okay, thank you. Unfinished business or old business? Building committee?
That's going to be the proposed property land acquisition for East Independence.
My name's Brent Schonmeyer, co-chair of the building committee, and my other co-chair is open to this. I'm happy to kind of set this up for the benefit of the full board.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Love you, Michael. This is in some ways a really important decision because it represents the last land acquisition, really on our capital improvement plan. The building committee members, many of them are here gathered with us this evening. The simple version of this is this is a straight up land swap. During our capital campaign, our building program, we've done this in a couple of other areas. And the consideration is, are we swapping one thing of value that's sufficient to the other thing that we're swapping? What we're swapping is an old Redbridge library branch that sits behind a shopping center that has been revitalized. It's kind of isolated back behind there. We moved forward into that shopping center and in an old former bowling alley, which was converted. And it's the and we rented that at that point, and we've had some challenges of liquidating property that we've had. Examples could be Red Bridge and others. And so we have needed a site for East Independence. And so Lane 4, which owns the shopping center, had a property on Little Blue Parkway. And if you need to see a Google map, and we can, pull it up and show it to you all, but it's people basically either know it by its opposite from First Baptist Church of Blue Springs and/or the breakfast place.
Corner Cafe. It's just
Corner Cafe.
just down the street from the Corner Cafe.
Not the Corner Cafe in Riverside, but the Corner Cafe in Independence. So an important in conversation really around that, because sometimes you can get a site. Well, what's the accessibility to it? There's a lot of traffic volume there. To our benefit is actually there's a signal already there at that interchange. If we were to go out on our own and identify independently sites that we might want to look and have, this would be one of the sites that we would be on our short list. So to the degree that we can swap one piece of property for another, an asset that we have for another piece of property, you have a recommendation that comes from the building committee to approve that. On our capital dashboard, which we'll see shortly, we had budgeted $750,000 for land acquisition for Independence. So our ability to swap one property for another property liberates, if you would, $750,000 that can fund our capital plan, which we're nearing to and toward completion. So that's a simple presentation of it. Other people may have a couple of details, and I think it's important to answer them or be responsive to them. And because if we do this, we are acquiring that property, and then we will begin the process of figuring out what a new library might look on that. One last thing I would say, we've downsized the library that we're thinking about building there. It was originally down on the capital plan for 20,000 square feet, and we've downsized it to 12,500 square feet. With the idea is at some point, if population grows or we have greater service demands there, it could be easily expanded. In some ways, that's the benefit of being at the end of the capital campaign, because I think in the process of working with our architects and the people doing the construction, we've figured out how to more efficiently use space so we can provide great library service with smaller square footage. So that's what I would present.
So if I may.
Yes, please.
The recommendation from the committee was an approval of the recommendation for the board will be an approval of a recommendation to the full from the committee to accept the letter of intent regarding East Independence. The actual verbiage.
Yeah.
Coming as a recommendation from the committee, no second required.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's the motion that's in front of us.
Okay, we have the motion as stated by the co-chair of the building committee. All in favor, please say.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Can you go back and pop up the?
Yeah, here you go. I'm sorry, Chris, we're going to get a second discussion.
So this is the map. If you don't mind, Brent, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
So this is the map of the parcels that we were considering. And so at the top, you can see a major thoroughfare. That's I-70. The intersection or interchange that's there is the Little Blue Parkway intersection. So you can see Drury End is there. That's the Blue Ridge Bank office building. So Blue Ridge Bank is there, but there are many offices all the way up. Children's Mercy Hospital, Corner Cafe, where it says sold there, that's completely been built as multifamily housing at this point. You can see in which is great, having a big multifamily complex right across the street from us that's a built-in audience. Right in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that there's something there with some words. That's Hidden Valley Sports Complex. Again, another built-in audience. So as you know, one sibling is playing soccer, the other sibling can be at the library doing homework. So there's, some benefits there. Brent mentioned the signalized intersection. You can kind of see that there's an intersection right there by the triangle. The triangle is the piece of property that we're talking about that's right below the Costco and Lowe's logos right there. And then the triangle, that's the piece of property we're talking about. The intersection, so the road right there is Little Blue Parkway, major arterial in eastern Jackson County. And then right across is, as Brent mentioned, First Baptist Church of Blue Springs, previously known as Tri-City Ministries, with the signalized intersection. very well positioned in terms of where we would want to be. In terms of appraisal, Lane 4 had this property on the market for about, I think it was $980,000. We appraised our building right at $1 million. And so we are, it's pretty close to an apples to apples swap. I think Weston Buckley may be on the call. I'm not sure if Wes is there or not, Cody. If he is, oh, there he is. Yep, there's Wes. So Wes actually represents Lane 4 and Trinity Development. And if there was any specific questions for him, I invited him to be here tonight. So, but he does have a children's birthday party to get to in 15 minutes. So we'll want to ask our questions quickly before the birthday party.
I have a question. Just, Brent, just because I haven't seen these, but in terms of the numbers, and I'm following up with Steve said, so the property looks like it's, I'll call it a even swap, right?
Yeah.
And you said that there was a $750,000 number in the capital budget.
Right.
And the 84.5, correct?
Right.
So how much of the new construction is this 6.4, or is that all new? I guess I'm just,
You're jumping ahead to the capital dashboard.
well, I'm just asking what, this is you're building a new building, then you have a land swap. So where is the building cost considered? And is it already factored into the numbers we have in front of us?
Let me give you, the answer is that we won't know until we go out and go to market. We've been experiencing escalating prices is actually what we saw really around Rain Valley. So the hope is that we would get this project underway before projects go up. $750,000 is favorable to us, and we've kind of gone through with some detail. Is there enough funds in the capital budget to fund every project that's on the list? You have to set Riverside aside because that's, so to speak, because that's a project unto itself. So in reality, there is money within the $84.5 million to build a new building. That's at the 12,500 square feet.
And Brent, I just want to correct, just to make sure I'm clear. So construction costs are in the 84.5. Land acquisition, if you go over on the right-hand side, you can see the land acquisition cost is over there. It's actually part of the soft costs.
Yeah.
In fact, if you go down below there, you see the lines: construction, project expenses, land. That 750 is included in that $3.5 million.
And Gordon, actually, I just noticed something because I just looked this at. It shows the 12,500 square feet. It shows the $6.4 million cost. I think it would be more closer to what the Green Valley is at the 4.9. So I just don't know that that number has been updated.
Yeah, or taking those two numbers together and dividing them by 2. Yeah, I mean that's.
So you said Green Valley is updated relative to the 12.5, but East Independence is not.
We've not gone to market, so we've not come back with a guaranteed maximum cost yet. So, I mean, in reality, Gordon, we very may come back and Green Valley comes at some very high expense. And we decide is that we are not in a position financially or otherwise to build East Independence, but we would have secured a lot at some future point if we wanted to or could, that we would. So the view of staff and the view of the building committee is that there's sufficient funds within this, particularly with the $750,000 savings, to proceed with construction of East Independence.
Okay, and I'm sorry to, so I understand. So we have a facility that is a temporary facility here now?
No, this is a brand new service.
Brand new, okay.
Brand new service.
Right.
Brand new service location. So, in some ways, at the minimum, we should liquidate our asset for something of equal value at a place that we want to be. If for whatever reason, we decide we don't want to be at that location or we don't have the funds to go to the East Independence branch, we still have a valuable asset that we can sell off. So sorry if I
That's all right.
loop to loop, but I'm catching up.
We can double check with Wes and make sure he has that.
Hey, Wes, do you have any other comments you care to make?
Yeah, that was to you, Wes.
Oh, any comments? No, except that we're excited to do the transaction. You know, our company's worked with you guys a lot on the Red Ridge location, and when this idea was brought, like a nice fit, a clean swap between the properties, and you know, we will continue to own quite a bit of land out here, and we personally love the idea of having a one of your library branches potentially being located out in this area. So we're excited to move forward. And if anybody has any questions, I'm obviously happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for the vote on it.
Yes.
In favor of accepting the proposal from the building committee, please signify by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining? The motion is carried. Thank you, Brent. Preliminary business awards and recognitions. Are there?
Just real quickly, Wes, thanks for being with us. Go have some cake and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. I appreciate you helping accommodate the party here, and look forward to it, everybody. Thanks.
While we're still on building plan, we can just do a real quick capital plan update. If that's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So just real quickly for everybody, in terms of capital plan, if that's okay, I'll go ahead and run on that. So next slide, please. So this is the same dashboard that you have in front of you. Again, the sort of the real important things to notice is that the black means that it's all closed out and done. Green means that it's underway and, you know, for the most part, pretty close to being done. In some cases, you can look over there and see Cold Road 97% and Grandview 77%, Parkville South Independence 77%. So we are slowly closing in on the end of the line for the projects, and that's where we are for the dashboard. If we go to the next slide, these are the images that we always like to share. So this is Green Hills, obviously taken a couple of days ago because of all the snow. But you can see that we've got a lot of the sheetrock and drywall work that's going on. Completely sealed up, skylight. I believe that skylight goes across, like as you walk in the front door, it's the natural like entry back to the back of the building. And so this is Green Hills and moving along really, really well. The next slide is Lee Summit, and again, you can see Lee Summit is sealed up. Ceiling grid is going in Lee Summit as well as some of the lighting. So that's usually, I mean, that's not the last one. When you start seeing carpet going in, that's when you know we're really in the home stretch. We don't have carpet yet. You can see that the floors are pretty clean. The ceiling's going in, and we are still looking at a spring opening for Lee Summit. If we go to the next slide, please. This used to be North Oak. As you can see, there's not a whole lot there anymore. But we are in a good position to now start moving forward on the next phase, which is start grading for the new building. So, and I can't remember if I mentioned this last month or not, but we did actually salvage several of the exterior bricks, and we gave them to several of the longtime staff who've been there at the building. I actually have one as well in my office that's working as a bookend right now. So this is North Oak. And I think that's the end of our construction. Yes, it is. So, yes.
Just for this group to know, Lee Summit schools have opened their 4th middle school, equidistant between East Lee Summit and the Lee Summit branch. So it's going to be an ideal way to really increase the amount of kids that are in the building.
Brent Schallenberg, the building committee co-chair. There's Riverside later on in the agenda that we will take up sort of separately. So you want to say, well, why didn't we deal with that then? We're going to deal with it later. So
Any other comments or questions on the?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Sorry. On North Oak, and I'm looking at your schedule here, you show the JE done cost. The original 5.636, and then you have the current of 6,718 and a 331 delta. Is that, am I missing something? It's about $1.1 million spread.
Yeah, not sure why it's showing up like that. Jake just messaged me and says that he's gonna look into why it's showing up like that, but I'm not, I don't know. We'll have to find out why the spread is what it is.
Gordon, I'm going to ask staff to go through and, re-verify some of these numbers because the
We need to anyway.
East Independence number should be lower than that. So I think it's important as we go into it, as we consider with North Oak, this was kind of the last one we got in before some of this construction escalation, really sort of took off. So thanks for flagging those and, go back and.
Oh, okay. Jake's already identified part of it. When we were allowed to use the 750. If you look over all the way across on North Oak, you'll see that there was a $750,000 land acquisition because we didn't acquire land for it. We actually used that $750,000 and added that to the revenues. So that's where part of that is. And that'll get you to. So, but we'll keep working on it.
Any other questions? Comments?
No, just thanks again on the land acquisition. Land acquisition can be problematic. Picking the right piece of property at the right price and where it is that you want to be. Understand these are generational investments. So I think we're really happy with the East Independence location and some of the other property acquisitions that we've been able to make, through our new service delivery locations, through land swaps or other things. So, Green Valley would be another example. The green, always get helmet people, green fields, what's the green?
Green Hill.
Green Hills. That was a land acquisition. And so in some ways, if you look on the right-hand side, there's a lot of money in here for land acquisition, which in reality that we were able to kind of achieve where we wanted to be without spending that money. So.
Other questions? Okay. On to the awards and recognitions.
None that I'm aware of. Teresa, did you?
No, I didn't.
Although I do want to, because she hasn't been in the room for 2 years, I want everyone to say hi to Susan because she hasn't been here for 2 years. And just as we were trying to keep our population lower in this building, she was participating virtually. But I wanted Susan to start coming again, and so please say hi if you haven't had a chance to.
Came down out of my heart. Down the hallway.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome back.
The next matter of financial reports.
Right. So Juan, you're up.
Page 1, the first page shows the amount of tax revenue we have received by the end of February. The total amount is just over $59 million, which is about 4.6% higher than last year. That's $2.5 million. We have received 95% of budgeted revenue. And I believe we will meet our budget. Also, during the month, we received a statement from Jackson County telling us the amount of tax payment made under protest. That number is $105,000, which is about 40% reduction from a year ago. It was $140,000 in 2021 and $1.2 million in 2020. Page 2 shows the operating expenditures. We spent about $20.5 million on payroll and benefits. That's close to 62% of the budget. Library materials is about $7.3 million, 60% of the budget. All other operational accounts is about $5.68 million, 53% of the budget. Next one is the debt service fund. Right in the middle shows the amount of interest we have received and the total amount of disbursement we received, which is about $80.37 million, leaving a balance about $3.48 million. Also, we have made 2 payments so far this year. $3 million for interest, $3.58 million for principal payments. The debt balance is about $58.7 million. Next page is the statement of capital project fund.
This point you spent.
At the top, the first one is Story Center. So far, we paid about $93,816. And for Reading Rocket, we only spent about $9,350. And I believe that project will not be finished, and we may have to budget again for $340,000 for next year's budget. Next one is the data storage and self-checkout units. So far, we spent about close to $300,000 for data storage, and I don't think we will finish the self-checkout units. And that about $1 million we have to budget again for next year. The last one is capital improvement plan. So far this year, we spent about $13.3 million for the capital plan. The next page shows the gifts and grants fund. We have about 35 grant-funded projects. This year, we have received over $170,000, and we spent about $163,000. The last one is the health insurance fund. Total amount of contributions for employer and employees is about $2.4 million. The amount of expenditure for fixed costs and fees is about $705,000, which is about 70% of the budget. And the medical claims is about $1.56 million, about 50% of the budget. The cash on hand is close to $2 million, and the fund reserve is about $1.67 million, which is above the maximum fund reserve. For the month.
Thank you, Con. Any questions? Yeah, question. Okay, John.
Yeah, John Laney. I noticed in the revenue projections back a couple of slides, I know we were expecting less from Jackson and Clay County than we actually received, which was, probably a good way to budget. But Platte County had what, 1% less than anticipated. Is there a particular reason for that?
1% less than last year's number.
Okay.
I believe that was because of the delinquent tax payments, much smaller than last year's. And last year, I think we received a settlement due to the merge of the gas company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gas company.
Yes. It was under dispute for 2-3 years. And last year, we received a settlement.
Okay.
So we received that settlement, which increased our revenues, and then also there was more delinquent taxes. So it's showing that there is a decrease. It's a decrease compared to last year, but in terms of our projections, it's still essentially.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Question.
I just want to recognize that, we weren't getting grants and donations. And that has really flourished at Diana and Room. And thank you for your hard work, because that has become quite an accomplishment.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, business, finance and audit committee.
Okay, I'm up. Okay, Gordon Cook. I had a longer report prepared, but some things changed and I'm going to shorten it. So, a couple comments on the budget, just to bring up speed. I'm not going to repeat what we talked about last year, then last month. There's been no change in that. Subsequent to that, last meeting, I met with Stephen Kwan to get into a little more into the details of the budget and a better understanding. I will be working with them as we go forward, just to get my understanding and kind of, I guess, develop some of the presentation materials for the budget when we get to that point in May. And also to look just, again, get some cost trends in place just for understanding where things were and where they are. In terms of the budget data, we talked about some revised formats. And one of the ways I like to describe it is is to understand what it costs, as I say, to keep the doors open and the lights on. And then look at the component pieces of a budget after that in terms of what may be discontinued, what is being added, so we can look at the pieces and just understand the funding requirement for the operational piece. And then on top of that, you have obviously the debt funding, and then the capital piece. One thing that came out in our discussion committee meeting was what capital reserve funding. And it's, Steve, you can correct me, we don't have a really solid long-term capital projection. If you think about, I guess an easy way to do it is take one of the buildings that has been in place and you've had your renovations done and complete on the top half of your list here. And then you have to look at what your major renovations are going to be as that building ages. So it's the parking lot, it's the roof, it's the HVAC equipment, it's carpet, things of that nature. And you have to understand what your capital requirement is as that building ages, whether it's 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years, depending on the life of the asset component. So I think you said, is it Jake is going to work on that
Yes.
somewhere down the road here?
So you're correct. And so what Jake and I have been working on is sort of like an industry and average cost per square foot, which is the number that I gave John a few months ago. But Jake, as he finalizes the capital plan, is going to start taking that information that he got from our contractors and subcontractors, figuring out the lifetimes and all of that, and then start creating that project. That's his big goal for next year.
Yeah. And that's a fairly extensive analysis. The thing I will tell you is if you can get 50% accurate on the first pass, you'll be lucky. And over time, you just modify it and correct it, and you get a better handle on what your costs are and what your replacement cycles are. So that will be a factor at how that affects the current budget. I can't tell you. We'll find that out over the course of the next several weeks. Okay. The item that came up at the February meeting in closed session was discussed in an open session in March, was that the library was a victim of an ACH fraud. And I'm not going to walk through the details. The full package is on board docs with all the analysis in detailed finance committee meeting. The bad news is we were frauded of $64,000. The good news is we got it back.
All right.
And I will tell you, I'll just, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But I thought the interesting part of the email from the bank, it says that particular transaction was not handled by PNC in the manner we had expected. So I guess I'll read that as the bank made a mistake. And that worked out for benefit because everyone I talked to, and I talked to 3 different banks who do this, and they would tell you that your chances of getting that money back are slim and zero. So we got full recovery. Anyway, just to give you a little perspective, about 50% of the library's disbursements go out via ACH. As Steve explained to me, the mail system doesn't work very well on this side of the city. It doesn't work any better on the other side either, in case you were wondering. So there is a association called NACHA, National Automated Clearinghouse Association. Okay, and they make the rules for the banks. All the banks have to operate in the same manner. And the interesting part, and I hadn't dug into this in several years, I will tell you. ACH used to be fairly slow and be subject no different than checks were to the Fed zones. That's all changing. Technology is changing. It's almost moving to the point of a wire transfer. You can actually do ACHs within a few hours now. Okay, which is why I wasn't too optimistic about getting the money back, because that money hits that fraudulent, the fraudster's bank account. They wire it out. It's gone. So that's what's happening. The thing that came out of this transaction, so, you say, great, we got the money back. We're thrilled with that. It did bring to light some issues with respect to policies and procedures. The authority limits don't seem to be as well defined as what I guess I'm accustomed to in the industry. Some of the documentation isn't as precise as what we understand the procedures to be. And we also discovered that what I'll call event, and I'll put the word fraud event, escalation procedures, we really don't have any. So if you look at if you go back to the packet and look at the timeline, you'll see some gaps in terms of when things happen. The good thing is, as soon as they made the discovery that there was fraud, they contacted the bank. At that point, the bank fraud division takes over, and you just sit and wait and hope. But the good thing is that happened very, very quickly. So after some discussion, the committee came back with a motion to have staff prepare some immediate changes in terms of our policies and procedures. We'll discuss those at the next finance committee meeting. And then on a secondary basis, to have staff also get some information on cost as well as resources for a more extensive review of policies and procedures. And we'll do that after the budget cycle is complete in the second half of this year. So that's where we stand on it. And like I said, I understand Quan has done some things already. So those wheels are in motion.
And that actually it's up there on the screen, that comes from the committee in the form of a motion, if you wish to do so.
Yeah, well, okay. And so let me expand on that. So one of the things we talked about was who would do this. It was recommended that we look at an outside party and not our current auditors. You preferably do not want your auditors auditing their own work. So the recommendation is to look at an outside resource. I actually have a couple of people I know, but someone who works in the industry, preferably a CPA who does this, familiar with Missouri, what Missouri statutes are and requirements are. And those people are out there. There are not many of them, but they're out there. So that is the recommendation to follow through. And that's something we'll have to budget for in the next year's budget as well. Any questions? Comments?
Just to clarify, this is going to be a matter and the associated cost be rolled into the budget for next year.
If the board votes to approve.
So do I need to make the motion for
No,
that?
you've made the
Okay.
motion. It's come as a recommendation from the committee, no second. Now it's just discussion and at some point call to question.
So we have a motion on the board. Any discussion or questions of Gordon? Questions?
Yeah, one
Comments?
question.
John.
Is there any estimate of what that outside consultant might cost?
I didn't go that far. I don't think it'll be as much as you might expect. We can do it on a gradual basis and get guidance all the way to having them write it, which obviously would be more expensive. I think there's some work that has to be done as I look at the current procedure guidelines. As an example, the dollar limits are not well defined. Who has the authority to approve certain transactions and to what dollar amounts aren't well defined. That doesn't take a ton of work, but you have to understand what's going on here before you write a policy. So you can put a skeleton together and then come back. If you want me to throw a number out, 15 to 25.
15 to 25,000.
Yeah. I mean, that's a guess.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Brent. I appreciate that, Gordon, because I don't know what to expect, because I didn't know whether it was going to be 5,000 or I just don't, it's a service I don't buy and purchase. So I had no sense of what it is that it might cost. So,
well, just to give you some perspective, but the rack rate for the people you're going to be using are probably between 2 to 250 range, 275, maybe up to 300 depending. The hours, I would guess at a minimum, probably, 70 to 80. Okay. Again, it really depends on how much work we can do internally.
but that's helpful information to me because I had no sense of what
Yeah, we're not going to spend hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, now, if I can add a little more context, if I remember correctly, our traditional hood is isn't their engagement for 36,000?
37.
37 this year. So just in context.
And this would be a special procedures engagement. It's not an audit. It's something you define. They say we're going to come in and do X. They do X, and as long as they deliver, both sides are happy.
Any other questions? Comments? So the motion was made, there's no second needed, so all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, any opposed?
Aye. Hey, Ron, you just got to give us a minute for those of us that are on Zoom. You can't go so fast.
I shall give you a minute. So let's start from the beginning again. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? And abstaining. Thank you. Librarian's report.
Yeah, librarian's report. If Gordon, were you finished?
I am.
Okay, just
Thank you.
I didn't want to step on you. So, librarian's report. Two parts here, and I see Lisa Campbell walked in, so she's right on time. On the original agenda, we were going to talk about the Story Center and certification, but Mark Livingood, the Story Center director, was off work, and I wanted to honor that and not make him come in and work even for a few hours to talk about the things he loves to talk about. And so I asked Lisa if she could come in and talk about the Reading Rocket and what we're doing with the Reading Rocket. So Lisa, you are up.
It's going to be weird with this to the back of me, but. You can sit. Yeah. I know where you've been, Teresa. Okay.
There are microphones all over, so.
Yeah, we can hear you. That's good. So I am Lisa Campbell, and I'm the manager of the Reading Rocket, and I'm here to talk about that program with you. And I understand I'm supposed to go Cody next, please. So the Reading Rocket is a 38-foot outreach vehicle focused on providing meaningful family literacy programming and resources in places where customers face barriers to accessing the library and other community services. We also bridge the gap between physical branches and community partners with a wide variety of outreach events. In short, we engage people where they are. Simple as that. It makes not sound like a lot, but at the heart of it, we're essentially a library on wheels. We focus on bringing the library experience to folks out in the community. Additionally, we help rebuild relationships with customers who may have had negative or little to no previous library experiences. Excuse me. Next. So this started a few years ago with a desire to take Storytime out into the community in places such as high-density, low-income housing, where traditional outreach story times and play and learns would normally be difficult to provide. Also, we have a director that likes a project. We first purchased a used bookmobile from Pierce County Library in Washington State and drove it back 1,800 miles to start a new life here. The crew began Storytime visits in 2015 before renovations to convert the Rocket from a bookmobile to a vehicle better suited for our programming were complete. In that time, we built relationships with friends like Link Caring Communities, Truman Medical Center, and Hawthorne Place, which is right down the street. Organizations that would go on to become essential community partners once the truck was fully operational. The Reading Rocket made its official debut as a fully functioning outreach vehicle right about here. In 2017, February of that year, at annual Have a Heart Day. This is an event that takes place at Mark's Family Dental in Clay County, and they provide free dental care for uninsured children. Since then, the Rocket has taken off, continually increasing, thank you for that, continually increasing the number of visits made and the number of customers served. By the time we're in that 2018-19 season, we were actually making an outreach event almost every single working day. And then we fell off. The 2019-20 year had a few setbacks for us. First, the truck actually began to suffer from old age and mechanical problems, and it was out of commission for a lot of months for repair. And of course, the onset of a global pandemic in March of 2020, and we shut our doors. Next, Cody. So COVID-19 changed all the rules for libraries, and the Reading Rocket was no exception. Since the Rocket Crew's entire job is meeting customers face-to-face, we had to redefine how we meet our goals. Once MCPL opened its doors for curbside service, the team set to work to figure out how we could get back to our community that needed library services more. So we built safety plans. Thank you, Dustin Koopman. We redesigned services to fit into a drive-up world. We purchased canopies, tables, stations, cones, plastic bags, and a lot of PPE. If you had the pleasure of meeting us in the early days of that pandemic, we looked a lot more like an episode of MASH than we did a library. We also reached out to our partners. As the world was social distancing, we decided to meet our customers at locations where they were already accessing other services. This cut down on the number of trips folks had to make while also making it easy for us to locate them, or them to locate us. Lastly, we needed to find a way to help build home libraries. With access to the library limited, or in some cases non-existent, it was more important than ever for us to help children and their families access books. Next. So we had so many fantastic partners during and before the pandemic. I'm going to highlight just a couple of them and some of the places that we visited at the height of COVID-19. So Community Services League is a very special partner for MCPL, and the Rocket got the opportunity to be a part of their many drive-through food pantries. With more families than ever facing food insecurity, CSL gave us a way to connect with people, many of whom hadn't used MCPL before. Baby Grace is a longtime partner of the Reading Rocket. It was one of our originals, in fact. They are a diaper and clothing pantry with 18 locations throughout the greater Kansas City area. Again, a natural partner for the Rocket. Baby Grace also converted their pantries to drive-through style, making it safe and easy for us to connect with families. Just prior to the pandemic, the Kansas City Symphony began building a new outreach vehicle of their own, the mobile music box. It is really cool if you haven't seen it. Their original intention was to bring mobile symphony programming to local schools, but they shifted their mission to offer free outdoor concerts in parks and green spaces throughout Clay, Platte, and Jackson counties. The The Rocket partnered to tag along and brought story walks and other resources to families at these events. Eventually, the library partnered to provide outdoor concerts in some of our own parking lots. Platte City, Raytown, Excelsior Springs, and Blue Springs North were all chosen to host symphony events. And of course, last but definitely not least, Jackson County Health. They were a very important partner for not just the Rocket, but for all of MCPL during the pandemic. Once the library began hosting the Vaxxed and the Stacks clinics, Jackson County Health Department also began following the Reading Rocket around to outreach events to offer open air clinics as well. The Rocket hosted 20 clinics and provided 409 vaccinations. Next. It feels weird telling a disembodied person to say next. So we talked earlier about building home libraries. The Reading Rocket has never been a bookmobile at MCPL. At Pierce County, she was not for us. We know that for the families the Rocket serves, circulation runs the risk of becoming a barrier to access. Our families move a lot, and we may only see them once or twice. So it is important for us to find ways for them to experience literacy at home. Our solution, Forever Books. Forever Books got their name from exactly this conversation that you see up here. So many times when I would hand a book to a child, they would look at me and go, "How long do I get to keep it?" And I would say, "Forever." And so we just started calling them Forever Books right up front, so children knew they didn't have to return them. Next. So you might be asking, well, we're a library. We're a public institution, a place for people to borrow materials, not keep them. So how do we manage to fund the Forever Books? The answer is through generous donations from partners and individuals. This story actually begins as one that's very personal for me. When my husband's great uncle Sebastiano passed away in 2018, one night at dinner on a trip home to Omaha to visit my husband's family, everyone began talking about the Reading Rocket, its mission, and the families we serve. I cannot help it. If you give me a window, I will talk about what I do. All librarians do. Now, Uncle Subby loved his local library. It was the cornerstone of his life. And a few weeks later, my husband's family called to tell me that they had all decided to make a donation to the Reading Rocket in Uncle Subby's name. And thus, the Forever Book Fund was born. Since then, our amazing development department has helped us make connections with very generous corporate sponsors like Community America Credit Union, and more recently, the North American Savings Bank, who has funded an entire year's worth of Forever Books. This year, the development department even made the Forever Book Fund the focus of the Giving Tuesday campaign, and we raised enough money through individual gifts alongside a generous match from Children's Plus to purchase nearly 1,000 Forever Books. So, the library is moving back to business as usual with programming. So is the Reading Rocket. We're moving back to pre-pandemic style programming and working with old and new partners alike to provide in-person story times, play and learns, and other literacy programming. Here are just a few of the many partners that we work with. Hawthorne Place Apartments are near and dear to us. They're just 2 miles down the street here from us at HQ. And the complex actually encompasses the lowest income census tract in our service area. At any given time, there are about 1,000 children living in Hawthorne, and we are working to find new ways to engage with them and their families. The Rocket provides a weekly story time to kids attending the on-site daycare in the community center, outdoor fun and engagement for families and the local Boys and Girls Club during the summer library program, and we are working to reestablish our parents group that we hosted before the pandemic. The Rocket provides story times to subsidized, unaccredited, or non-curriculum-based daycares throughout our service district. And Outreach Christian Education has been a longtime partner. We provide story times and also visit on family nights throughout their school year. This last one is brand new, and it is also very near and dear to me. Della Lamb is one of our newest partners, and we are so thrilled to get to work with them. Della Lamb has partnered with KC Refuge, bless you, to help family That's life. I work with kids. Delaware has partnered with Casey Refuge to help families of refugees from Afghanistan settle into the United States. While they are housed in short-term accommodation in Platte County, as they onboard to permanent living, the Reading Rocket is visiting for weekly play and learns and to provide forever books to families. I can go into this partnership for literal hours. Stop me at some point, email me if you ever want to sit and chat about them. But what I will tell you here today is that it's so exciting to get to be the introduction to library services for the first time for these families. We're building relationships and introducing them not only to MCPL, but in some cases, their very first library. Delalam has also committed to helping these families access their local branches once they get settled into their permanent homes. Next. Now here's the sad part of my tale. The Reading Rocket is well past her prime. She has lived a very good life. She has served 2 library districts and received countless of visitors, but it is time to replace her. MCPL has contracted with an industry expert in Michael Swendrowski of Specialty Vehicle Services to design and build a replacement Reading Rocket. The design phase has been completed and the job is now out for bid. We expect to see those by the end of this month, and we are super excited about that. Rather than being retrofitted, the new Reading Rocket will be designed specifically to meet the needs of our customers and allow us to once again provide all-board programming and to extend our offerings to include STEM programming for middle grade students and Harvesters Kids Cafe. Next. Okay, so due to time limits, there was going to be a video right here, which was a fabulous compilation from our Reading Rocket coordinator, Ian, who does a fabulous job, liaison, don't know where his title is. But I'm not going to be able to show that here for you. But if you have a short 5 minutes at any point, I encourage you to watch it. It's going to be put into board docs for everyone. Also, I know I'm standing here reading off a piece of paper, but in all honesty, I am incredibly passionate about what we do. I could talk about the people we serve forever. If you have any questions or you want to talk with me, if you'd ever like to ride along with me, give me a holler. You can email me and my crew at readingrocket@mymcpl.org. I also encourage you, if you do social media, to follow us on Instagram. You can see what we do, where we go, and when we'll be there. We are mcpl.readingrocket. Next. You have any questions for me? Thank you for your time.
I've got a question.
Oh, okay.
First of all, thank you. Your passion just comes through with in your voice. So appreciate what you do. When you go to each place, how many books do the kids get for, I guess?
It's 1 book per child per visit, and we do birth through teenager. I call it diapers to driving.
Okay, and then if someone wanted to make a donation, how do they do that?
So we do not accept donations of books. The Reading Rocket crew does pick all of the books that become forever books. We use MCPL's collection development policy as we pick ours, but you can always talk to Diana and the development department. We do take donations, and we got one actually just yesterday in the mail. Somebody sent us a nice letter and a $20 bill. So it was very sweet.
Okay, so just through our existing structure.
Yep.
Okay.
And it goes to the Forever Book Fund and it stays there. And that is all that those funds are used for, is to purchase forever books to create home libraries.
A question. Quan, is the money that you had in the capital budget, what did I don't remember, 300 something?
Yes.
That's for a new?
That's for new Reading Rocket.
Okay.
I think I should just mention about we finished the design work.
So what did we spend on the original one?
Steve can talk about that. It was used. We purchased a used vehicle because this was an experiment.
Yeah, no, I remember.
I'm trying to remember, Quan, do you remember? I mean, it was,
I think we spent about 20,000.
that's what I think, yeah.
That wasn't very much at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I have a question for the development side, because typically there are people that like to fund things like this as a one-time shot, and we can discuss that later. So.
Yeah, we have tried, but there's still a possibility. And I would mention too, on the original Reading Rocket, we did have to pay quite a bit to retrofit.
It was
that.
very expensive.
Yeah, it was very expensive to retrofit the bookmobile, so we can pull those costs too.
One of the great things about the new Reading Rocket, and it does look like a large expenditure, but she will be built to meet our needs. This new Reading Rocket will also be ADA compliant. We have a lot of customers that utilize chairs and walking implements for mobility, and they're unable to get onto the Reading Rocket as it currently stands because there are steps.
No, I mean, I'm not questioning
Yeah.
the 300 because people that buy these mobile homes or some spend up to $500,000.
Okay. I just really wanted to get to say that too, because I'm excited about that.
The other point though that Lisa's, and honestly, the reason that Lisa has to read is to keep within the time limit that I gave her. I mean, if she didn't go off the papers, we'd be here for 30 minutes hearing about the reading, which is fine, which is great. But the other big advantage, other than being ADA accessible and more flexible, all the things that she mentioned, is that it also will not require a commercial driving license. The new vehicle one. The old one required a CDL to drive, which was always an issue for us in terms of
Most folks
finding
with
employees.
CDLs aren't accustomed to working with children, the kind that we need, so.
I have one more question. So how about if somebody wanted to, because I really think I have an idea of a group that would like to help maybe, but I don't know if they want to give money and not at least somewhat see the books that they're, they don't want to just give money and not know what the books are going to be. So do you have any plan in place that could accommodate that, where they could at least have some choice? And I want to pay for these books. I just don't want to just give money for anything.
We have not done that before. We have always taken our funds outright and set them aside because the funds are there. We don't keep a lot of books on hand because we don't have a place to store them. We purchase them as we need and as we go. That is something that Diana and I could discuss and talk with anyone who was wanting to look at an option like that.
If you could, that would be appreciated.
And Children's Plus. I mean, Children's Plus is where we tend to buy them, and we get incredible bang for our buck working with Children's Plus.
Well, I have a particular person, organization, in mind, and they're not going to just give money to and not know. So if we could, something like that could be at least accommodated.
And that is a discussion that if somebody wanted to have, we are open to having those.
And I mean, we haven't done that with the Reading Rocket, but the Rotary Club of Independence recently gave us a $10,000 gift, and we gifted book bundles to every first grade classroom in Independence and Fort Osage school districts. And we provided a list of titles, and they reviewed them, and we purchased those so they were consistent across the.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's
so we
what-
have done like a designated type of
Great.
donation.
Thank you.
I just had a comment. I just love your passion. Thank you for the way you serve the kids and just pour your life into that. And, if I was a kid, I'd be really excited to listen to you.
I'm a little stiff talking to adults. I fully admit it. I'm not great with you all, but come watch me do story time sometime.
Thank you.
I love it, and I get to do this is my pleasure. I get to do my passion every single day, and I love it. So.
Yeah, that's evident. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. So hopefully next month, we will talk about Story Center and telling your story and Story Center certification. I think that's what we're going to try to do. We'll make sure that staffing works for us for that. I just had a couple of other things to mention on the librarian's report. The first one is I want to give you an update on the Independent School District and Mid-Continent lawsuit against Jackson County over the Unilever tax incentive Chapter 100 bonds that you all generally remember. So what we received, we did receive an update on CaseNet on March the 7th that the lawsuit was updated to a default judgment. The motion for default judgment generally means, and I have to read this because I'm not a lawyer, so I gotta make sure I get this right. The motion for default judgment means that the county hasn't filed a response for the petition in the required time, and that required time was a negotiated time between both sides, and the county dropped the ball. The county requested that the court set aside the ruling on March the 9th, but the rules are really pretty strict and will require the county to show what is known as an excusable neglect as to why they didn't respond in the allotted time. All parties had agreed to the extension of time in the extension until January. And in agreeing to that time limit, the county would not withhold the payments. The agreed upon date came and went, and the school district and Mid-Continent combined filed a motion later that month, about a month after the agreed upon date. So we gave them basically a month's worth of grace time and still didn't come up with the response. And so there's going to be a hearing on the motion later in the week. Typically, in a case for money damages, which you remember, well, I'll get to that in a second. Case for money damages, the default judgment helps to establish liability, but there has to be a hearing to quantify the damages. Here, the relief was sought as a ruling where the county would not grant the tax waiver or a clawback as the matter of law. So it's a little different in terms of how it'll all be settled out. And as I mentioned, after there was the default judgment, the county rushed in and all of a sudden said, wait a minute. But their wait a minute was still about 6 weeks late or something like that. So we'll see what happens. But based on my understanding of this, and you know, there are attorneys in the room, but based on my understanding of this, this sounds like that the Independent School District and Mid-Continent are going to be able to retain their taxes, but we'll ultimately have to see what the county comes up with. Phil, how did I do?
You did. You got A-.
A-. Okay.
We don't have a hearing later this week. We'll be filing a response to their motion to set aside. And then it's in Jackson County, motions are more often than not just decided on the paper without a hearing. Whether this judge will want a hearing on the motion to set aside or not remains to be seen.
So that's where we are with this issue. It's lining up to be positive for us so that we won't have the money clawed back and that we'll be able to maintain our taxes, and we won't set that nasty precedent where people will just all of a sudden say, I don't want to pay my taxes from 5 years ago. and the county has this precedent of allowing people to do that. So I would say that's good news. A couple other, I just want to give you it's really just a potpourri of activities that I was involved with, but I thought you might be interested. That we did, Mid-Continent and the city of Grain Valley did close on the property for the new Grain Valley branch earlier this month. So the property is ours completely. I guess they still have to file the title. I mean, all the paperwork's been done and we're moving forward. That I did participate, as well as a few other staff members, in the Missouri Public Library Association's virtual library advocacy day. I spoke to several legislators about library issues. We reached about 17 of our 32 legislators, just as an FYI. Library funding issues seem to be progressing well through the legislature. The e-content bill that we talked about does have a Senate companion now, but does appear to be stuck in committee and likely will stay there for the rest of the year. It's not unusual for a first-time bill to kind of churn through committee and not see the light of day, and then gets refined the next year and moves forward. I spoke with John Patterson is the chair, and he's actually from Lee Summit. He's one of ours. Spoke with him a little bit. He's the chair of the committee, and I spoke with him a little bit about it, and that's what he kind of thinks is going to happen. The next week after that, I spent the day in Jefferson City as part of the Eastern Jackson County Chambers of Commerce with their advocacy trip, and I was able to connect with several legislators that I didn't speak with during the virtual legislative session. So it's a very productive day there. I did speak at the opening of a traveling exhibit from the Czech and Slovak Museum of History, and it was at the exhibit at the Midwest Genealogy Center. The mayor of Sugar Creek and honorary consuls from the Czech and Slovak republics were also there to help kick off the exhibit. So it's a really fun program. It's a bunch of displays. There aren't very many artifacts, but if you're sort of interested in the history of the Czech and Slovak people in the United States, which a lot of people who visit the Genealogy Center are, it's interesting and certainly worth building those relationships with people and around the Midwest Genealogy Center. I also made a couple of presentations. I made a presentation to the Missouri State Library for new Missouri library directors about the purpose-based library book and how you might want to weave that into your library. I also finished preparing for a PLA presentation with Brad McKenzie, who works with us from SDA Architects. And Brad and I are doing a presentation at PLA on library construction methods, which is almost as exciting as it sounds. And then I also recorded a presentation on our Access Wellness program for PLA. They wanted me to put it on tape just in case. And then I'll actually be doing it live while I'm there. So I've got a couple of program presentations at PLA. Dustin, are you on the program as well?
Yes, sir. Right.
What I thought.
Right.
Yeah. So and I think that's it as far as I know. It's just me and Dustin are presenting at PLA this show. So that concludes the librarian's report.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Now it's to new business and to adjust the non-bounding levy rate. For
Right.
the 3 counties.
Yeah. So and just an FYI for newer board members, typically I do business like this. I tend to sort of tee it up for you. And then I get down to a staff recommendation and then you all take it from there. So what's going on here? The tax jurisdictions are required to set a non-binding levy rate as outlined in RSMO 137-243 and as applied in 137-180. The non-binding rate is used to create property tax estimates for residents in counties with a charter form of government, i.e. Jackson and Clay County. Since MCPL includes parts of Clay and Jackson County, the library is obligated to adhere to these provisions for the entire district. Failure to set the non-binding levy and notify the counties will result in a 20% reduction in taxes collected. This process is well ahead of our necessary steps in creating the annual budget and is not used as part of the budgeting process, although required by law. MCPL typically calculates the actual levy and revenue amounts when the library receives the county assessed valuation reports later in the year and certifies the actual levy rate once that amount is authorized by the state auditor. The values around this is primarily ministerial, but this action is also stewardship that the library believes that the public and private dollars entrusted to us must be used effectively and efficiently to improve the community. So staff recommends that the board set the non-binding levy rate at the voted ceiling of 40 cents per 100 assessed valuation.
Discussion, questions?
Does that require a motion?
It does require a motion.
I so move.
Right.
Second, now discussion. Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Rita.
You mentioned 2 of the counties. Is it because Platte already has a levy?
No, it's because Platte is not a charter form of government. We're not required to set a non-binding rate in Platte County, but there's no way for us to separate Platte out. So
Platte will also fall under this levy.
As they always do. We are a consolidated library district, so Platte County always.
This is strictly a notification.
Yeah.
Just to satisfy the statute, correct?
Yep.
Correct.
So, I mean, the budget gets done later, and the budget gets done later. Last year, the levy rate was 3,486. You know, the 40 is strictly a notification number. It won't be 40 cents when we're done.
Okay.
So,
Never has been.
yeah, it'll be adjusted based on Hancock and what the budget comes up to be.
Thank you.
Real numbers.
But it is important to say it's just one levy for irrespective of what county it is.
Yeah.
It's a single levy.
Single levy.
So there's not a separate levy for Platte or separate levy for any of the counties.
And when did this levy come about? I mean, how many years have we been this on?
2016 was when the voters approved the levy.
And so this is 40% of that. So where does the other 60% of the levy go?
No, it's 40 cents on $100 of assessed valuation.
Oh,
40 cents.
so it's not.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
the adjustment to 40 cents was, the base levy at 16 was 32 cents. It was adjusted to 40 with Prop L. And so with the growth in the counties, valuation adjustments and the growth that gets adjusted down.
But, and this kind of seminar moment here. I mean, our library's traditionally been funded by property tax. 95% of it really comes from property tax, and we're unusual in that. And we probably don't know whether taxing jurisdiction probably is as reliant on property tax as we are. So as things change in the real estate market, you know, growth and or expansion in some senses, we're affected by that. So.
Comments, questions? Okay, the motion has been made and seconded that we proceed with the non-binding levy rate. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Carries. The auditor engagement letter.
Okay, so Mid-Continent Public Library is at a contract with Cochran Head and Vic to serve as the library's auditors. As reported last month, Cochran Head and Vic merged with Hood and Associates CPAs. Hood asked that Mid-Continent Public Library sign a new engagement letter with the new party properly identified. Typically, staff has signed these engagement letters through the course of the auditor's contract, or it's actually a fee agreement, not a contract, unless directed otherwise. However, Finance Committee wanted us to bring this document to the full board for consideration, again, primarily ministerial, although the existing contract does establish the relationship and the work to be done with MCPL and Hood. Staff recommends a motion authorizing staff to sign the letter of engagement.
Good motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
I second it.
Second, any discussion?
I just had a couple comments. I asked to have this presented here again. One, because it's Hood and the change and things, but it was also, and I'm repeating a little bit from the Finance Committee meeting, in terms of what what an audit covers and what it doesn't cover, and came up in the ACH discussion about whether the auditor has a role in the oversight, and the very clear answer is no. The people responsible for the financial statements and the financial integrity of this library sit in this room. The auditor's role is solely to express an opinion on the financial statements and the supporting schedules as they lay out in their letter. In terms of how they deal with fraud, there's an awareness level. I will tell you, having spent 8 years in auditing, if they find fraud, it's pure luck. It's just the way it is. Ron also knows that. If you look in some of the sections, it says, do not expect the auditors to perform specific procedures to detect waste or abuse. We will not examine all transactions. We will not necessarily catch something that is not compliant or that is wrong. And you'll see that. So that's the boilerplate language in the audit letter. There are 2 pages of management is responsible. Again, I'm saying that because of people in the room here. And the fee, did you say the fee, Steve? It's $37,815 is the maximum, which I assume is what they'll bill. So that's it. My comments.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Just to touch on what Gordon mentioned, it's been a long time since I was in public accounting, but the whole idea of an audit is basically to use a whole array of sampling and testing. And if tying to what Gordon says, if by virtue of the testing and sampling you stumble across something, then you pursue it. But by the very nature of sampling, it's just what it is. It's pick and choose and see if you find something. And I think it might be analogous if I go to a medical doctor and have my initial checkup. And that might suffice, give me a general idea. And then if anything's wrong, it maybe have x-rays and so forth. But if everything looks okay at my initial checkup, I'm not going to have those x-rays because they were not called for. And then later I have something catastrophic happen. Well, that's just the luck of having a general checkup. So to stress what Gordon said, there's absolutely no assurance other than generally accepted auditing standards, which are not insurance. So, board everybody today. Any other questions or comments, please? Okay, we have seconded that we engage the Hood firm. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed
Aye.
and abstaining.
I need to clarify who said aye on the no.
I believe when we had in opposition, somebody voted. Could I ask you to identify yourself, please?
Or was it delayed?
It
Was
was
it delayed? I think I was delayed aye.
It was.
Yeah, it was a delayed vote for.
Can we do
Yeah.
a vote out loud?
This is Noel. I was a little late, but I was.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Sorry.
Noel. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, motion's carried.
Okay, so next up is the IRS 179D tax benefit assignment. And this is, just looking through my tee up. Yeah, I didn't actually say this, but just as a preamble, we have done this before. We did this in July of 2020. So this is sort of a little bit of a repeat for those of you who were on board then. So what this is, eligible designers and builders such as architects, engineers, contractors, environmental consultants, and energy service providers can qualify for a tax deduction found in IRS regulations. Although the regulation is primarily targeted for tax-paying building owners, there's a special rule for public property. In this case, designers and builders that have enhanced the energy efficiency of a new government-owned building or made energy savings renovations and retrofits to an existing government-owned building are able to claim the deduction. As government entities do not traditionally pay taxes, owners of these buildings can allocate the accrued tax savings to the businesses responsible for the energy savings enhancements. This benefit is non-negotiable, meaning it can't be sold like a tax credit, only assigned. SDA and Helix have requested that MCPL assign the credit to them. More information on this program can be found on the IRS.gov site that's there on board docs. The value of stewardship, the library believes that the public and private dollars entrusted to us must be used efficiently and effectively to improve the community. Installing energy efficient fixtures saves money, and this program encourages our design consultants to pursue such solutions. So Mid-Continent Public Library, recommendation, staff recommends assigning this tax benefit in equal parts to SDA and Helix. And there was actually a tax benefit form that was in board docs if you wanted to see that form.
So move.
Second.
Second, discussion?
So I don't understand. So why do we have to assign it to them? I mean, it's nothing that we could take ourselves as a deduction. So that's why I don't understand why we need to assign it.
Because we have to, according to IRS regulation, the governmental entity has to assign it to, that we have to say someone gets it.
Okay.
And we don't want somebody to double dip. We don't want,
Right. I see what
somebody to get and so we have to assign it. And and as you said, we can't use it because we don't pay taxes. So.
If I understand, it cannot be split, is that right?
It cannot be split.
Okay.
Well, no, it can't be split.
Okay, do we know what the value of that benefit is to Helix?
We do not know the value. So this is one of the organization, Alliant is the name of the company that I worked with on this. And Alliant, I asked them questions like that. And we can't know that without knowing what Helix's full revenue is. So we can find out after the fact, but we can't know before the fact.
Okay, so as it's proposed right now, they would get the full benefit.
Well, Helix would get, actually, let me pull this up so I can speak correctly on this. The way that Helix and SDA split this up is that Helix would receive the benefit for Parkville and Withers, and SDA would receive the benefit for Blue Ridge, Colburn Road, Grayview, South Independence, and Woodneath Auditorium. And that was the agreement that they came to with Alliant. My guess is that is somewhat equal between the two.
Okay, so if we enter into this agreement, the full benefit are for those two businesses.
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yeah, combined, yeah.
Yeah, and if we don't enter into it, they don't get anything.
Right.
So is it legal to do something halfway in between so some financial benefit comes back to the library?
No,
Can't
it's,
sell it.
yeah, it's
Okay.
non-negotiable. We can't sell it.
Worth a try.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I do want to say that somebody else asked me a question about this too, which was about previous years. So in 2020, we made a similar allocation, and that actually went all the way back to 2018. And so it captured all of the activity from 2018 to present, or 2018 to 2020. And so this gets us 2020 to 2021. So we're all caught up. There's not extra that's still hanging out there in arrears. But my guess is we may see one more request sometime in the future.
Any other questions, comments?
A comment after the vote.
Pardon?
A comment after the vote.
Now, all in favor of proceeding with the assignment of the tax benefits, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And abstaining.
Joycelyn just left the room. Should we?
She actually made the motion.
Okay, just making sure that.
She seconded the motion.
My comment was, and this actually raises some interesting questions. We've had some operational experience with these buildings, and it would be good to go back and see what the operating costs are on some of these things, because obviously there's the tax benefit for energy efficiency, but we should operationally understand how more efficient our buildings are and get a better baseline for what it is that looks like. So that's my comment. It's not in opposition to this, but we need to sort of realize the benefit that we've funded.
No, I think that's an excellent idea, and we definitely should. Yeah.
Thanks, Brent. Next, our Riverside project.
I'll get it. I'll get it. I just
I'm gonna give it a try.
Oh, did you want to give it?
I'm gonna give it a try. I'm gonna see if I can get a B+. Brent Schondemeyer, co-chair of the building committee. Actually, there's a very wonderful explanation in board docs about this, and you go back and it goes all the way back to 2014. And this is a project that's had many lives, like Freddy Krueger and like a bad horror movie. You know, it just kept popping up. We said we didn't want that. We didn't want that. We didn't want that. We didn't want that. Frankly, through our patience and our diligence and sort of understanding what we want and what we didn't want, is that we were able to affect a partnership, a community partnership with a financial participation by the city of Riverside, who envies and values and wants the corner that our library is on for economic development. And this is another case of another land swap with some financial contributions into it all. And so I make it a habit to look at the materials prior to the board meeting, particularly things that relate to something I'm supposed to know, be knowledgeable about, because, you know, that's just who I am. And I realize there's a long document in there, legal agreements and the like, and in some senses, it made some sense for us tonight to approve the letter of intent, which the Riverside has already approved as a board, but their practice and habit, the Board of Aldermen, is that they won't sign until the other party signs. So the motion that I'm intending to make is to have us approve the letter of intent and then go back and look at the other detail in the building committee and then have that come back to the full board, because this is a more involved transaction than any one that we've ever done. So it's the property. There's some rental agreement about being able to occupy the property. The question is, they're going to send funds to us. That's a big dollar amount. So is that an ACH transfer, or do we go pick up a check? You know, I'm cluing into, you know, things that are going on. There's just some factors about it all that, while there's just been support of this whole approach throughout, is that details do matter, and how we do it is really sort of important. So that's what I'm going to say. The motion will be to approve the letter of intent. It's no different than what it is that we have seen before. Give the building committee a chance to go back and review the documents. Our attorney has reviewed the documents, but in some senses, our own understanding, our plain English understanding of exactly what this means is the desire of the building committee and staff to do it. So because we need to be able to explain this to ourselves, we need to be able to explain this to the people in Riverside about what happens and when it might happen. So that's my B+, B-, C+ presentation.
Not A-. Yeah, it's a good presentation, but just in real quick summary, you all have looked at this before. Not one word has changed. It's the same letter of intent that we had in October and that you all said we should pass to the city of Riverside, who also have looked at it and not changed one word of it.
So I'm going to make a motion to us to approve the letter of intent as contained in board docs.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we have the authorization to enter into this letter of intent. Any discussion or questions, comments?
Yes, I do. I have several. Is this a binding letter? If we sign it, are we bound by the terms of it?
I'm going to look to the person.
Probably not. You're calling it a letter of intent. That's distinct from a contract. And
does that mean we can walk away? I'd rather have it definitely.
I know.
That's one question. Second is, have we done a cost analysis on this in terms, do we have an appraisal on our current property?
Yes.
We do.
I would invite, this is actually the reason to take it back to the building committee. So if people have questions about this, we can go over this in some level of detail. There are slides that lay out the transaction, the considerations, and all of that. And Gordon, to be frank with you, those aren't easily represented in the language that you see in the legal agreement.
Well, I guess, and again, I don't have the background on this. I'm just looking at the numbers on here, but we're getting a sum. We're swapping lots, as I understand.
Right.
We don't know who's behind Riverside, if I'm correct. Is that accurate? I mean, this isn't the city wanting this. I assume this is a private.
No, this is the city. This is the city.
City.
This is the city.
Okay. But we're swapping property and we have to build a new building.
Right.
From scratch, which is in our 84.5 or not?
It's outside of the 84.5.
Okay, so in my simple mind here, I have, I'll equate this to a house. I have a house, it's old. I don't know, when was this thing built? Late 80s, early 90s? 30 years old, right?
Yeah, it opened right before the flood.
So I have a 30-year-old house that meets our needs, may not be perfect, but it's all paid for, correct? And so I'm going to swap it for property across the street and build a new house. And I have to spend money to build that new house.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So what am I?
I'm going to make the suggestion to you. Actually, the building committee unanimously support this. We're going to meet on it again. We can send you the documents related to it all. I encourage you to participate in the meeting at Zoom. The city is making a financial contribution to this project. As significant, I want to say, we worked through the cost of staying where we were, what that would look like over a period of time. We've talked about this 3, if not 4 different times. Other people on the building committee were satisfied at that point. It could be in retrospect, they have come to a different determination, but you've not had that opportunity, and I want to afford you that opportunity to understand the transaction and the details of it.
The other point, this is Joyce, and the other point that you forgot to mention is Riverside was always outside of the plan. It was always
yes, we moved it to the bottom of the capital project list to make sure that we were able to take care of everything else that we intended to do. So there are numbers that talk about what we would spend if we remodeled where we were. There's numbers that show what it is that would cost if we go to different locations. There's a significant contribution by the city of Riverside, on this. But the reason why I said let's approve the letter of intent and take it back to the building committee so that we all can review and understand what it is that we would come to when we come to a vote that would be contractual.
Well, I guess what you're telling me is that there's been cost analysis. We just don't have it here. The committee has it. Is that?
And it's been presented to the full board at some point when you weren't on.
We're asking for approval tonight, so that's all.
Yeah.
But and just to restate, we're going to spend money we don't have in the capital budget. We don't have a resource plan for it currently. Is that correct?
That's incorrect.
That is incorrect. Okay.
There was thorough staff work that was really done on this because frankly, they were challenged by the committee in a way that they probably haven't before, given the nature of the project, given the length of discussion. So happy to have staff get that to you tomorrow, and or that would be my request.
Yeah, just add a couple of things, Gordon, and for the rest of us too. This dance has been going on. I just call it a dance with Riverside over the course of 2014 or so, before my time on the board. And there were significant issues with the current building that were going to cost a lot of money. There was flood issues and runoff issues and parking lot issues and all of that. And so that led up to this whole conversation. It's been an ongoing conversation for a long time. And so this is kind of the final piece of the last part of the conversation. Was they had a lot that they were willing to give us, in addition to another $650,000, and they would take the building, buy the building from us. And so I think we all went over and looked at the land. I went over there several times. Just,
no, I'm familiar with it. I know
yeah.
it is.
Okay. So that's just maybe it gives a little bit of help to it, but it's been a long-term project.
And again, I'm just to restate, you're saying that the funds are available. These are not new funds that we have yet to.
There is a financing plan that was developed in relationship to this proposal. And so happy to get that to you. Happy to encourage you to participate in the building committee. You may look at it and decide you don't like it. And at that point, I would encourage you to vote no. But we're going to bring forward what it is that we believe is a thoughtful sort of proposal. We've said no to Riverside probably 4, if not 5 different times about things that we didn't like about it all. And we believe that we've negotiated something that's to the benefit of the Riverside community. On a longer term sort of basis, we've got their financial participation at a level that no other city government has participated in helping us with the library construction. We have a financing plan for it. And so apologies if I did not get that, ahead of time to you, but that's why we didn't want to approve it tonight and take it back to the building committee, because people can look at it a second time and say, oh, gee,
So just to understand the process, the approval tonight is not going to proceed directly to Riverside. This is going back to committee then, correct?
The approval tonight is the letter of intent, our side of it all. The building committee will go back and look at the agreement. Again, make sure that the agreement reflects what our understanding is of the proposal. It will come back to the full board, one would hope, a month from now to make sure that the legal agreements reflect our understandings of what it is that we agreed to.
Which brings me back to whether this is a binding letter of intent.
And again, I think it's not, but to take care of the issues that you have with it, when you send it over to Riverside, it should probably be accompanied with a cover letter saying that the final contract is subject to approval by the board of Mid-Continental.
That's
okay. Yeah, then
yes.
Then we've covered ourselves. We have a walkaway clause, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Rita?
Another question, is there an urgency to get this letter of intent to Riverside? Or can we hold for a month until the plans are more fully understood?
Well, the fact that it's not a contract, in some senses, we're 7 years into this conversation. And we've pressed Riverside pressed Riverside on their part to act in a timely fashion. So to me, not approving the letter of intent tonight would be unnecessarily withholding our consent. And to our attorney's point is that it's not binding in the senses that we're not committing any library funds, but in some senses, it's important to move forward in good faith. And that this would be an act of good faith.
I'm just going to restate my position that if, based on Phil's clarification, that the letter would accompany this and say it is subject to final board approval, then the letter of intent is just really an expression of really intent and not a final terms letter.
It's engagement, it's not marriage.
Yeah.
Okay. That might be a deep.
Yeah, and again, as long as there's a walkaway clause or a provision in there with which is what the letter would do, I'm fine with that. So.
This is not accompanied with a down payment.
No. The question was, is it accompanied by a down payment? There's no down payment because we're just expressing to follow through on our agreement. And when we come back, if you look at this, I would just ask this for the benefit of the building committee and the staff. If you have questions, just let us know so that we can come into the meeting and provide a really thoughtful answer to you. I had questions just to let you know well, what happens, because we're going to occupy this building for a period of time before the new library went in. So there's terms of rent in there. And I looked at it was like $1 a year, for existing, in the building till we get our new building built. And so there's some details in there, but please take a look at it. And, we'll try to get you a thoughtful, factual answer back to you. And, it's the prerogative of any of us to vote yes or no when this comes up before us for a final vote, a binding vote.
I just want to make sure that I've got my note on the cover letter, that the cover letter will state that the final approval is contingent and subject to final board approvals. And I want to say approvals because their board of aldermen, our board of trustees.
Yeah. Well, yes, and it's final contract.
Final contract?
Is subject to approvals of the board. And
thank you.
If you want to include them as well.
Any other comments? We're going to call the vote now. All in favor of proceeding with our engagement or betrothal with Riverside, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you, it's passed.
I'd like staff to notify everybody when the building committee is, so if you want to participate or if you have questions, all our committee meetings are open to any trustee and the public. So, and I want to get, the documents to you, Gordon, and Dr. Wilson, about Riverside, so you can take a look at it all. It is a involved transaction. It has lots of different elements to it, and hopefully that the materials will be sufficient to provide you some grounding in it, and that may generate particular questions which you need to get particular answers back.
Thank you, Brett. Next matter, the board policy regarding succession. Joyce, you want to address this or?
Who do you want to address that?
I could cover it, or you want from personnel?
I could kick it off and hand it back to you. This, in my tenure on the board, this will be the third director transition. The board has a succession plan in place. The board president and the chair of the personnel committee puts together a succession planning team to look at how we'll go about hiring our new director, about whether or not we will engage a search firm, all those things in the process by which that would occur. And so we had an initial discussion about it, and looking to activate our already established succession plan. At this point, I'll send it back to you, Ron.
It's precisely what Joycelyn mentioned,
Ron, could you speak up a little louder? Some of us at this end.
I'm sorry, yeah, this ad hoc committee has not been established, and it will, but shortly. And it is to be constituted by members of the board. And the services of an outside so-called recruiting firm will likely be required. And as things develop in this area, I believe it will be that we'll have this information shared with the board. And the scope of persons who are eligible for this certainly includes within the MCPL family as well as outside within the library profession. Other than that, as things develop, I certainly will make sure that everybody's aware of what transpires. Next matter is we have the visitors today, right? And just a bit of busy work at first. The bylaws that we inherited unfortunately limit the aggregate of time for visitors to half an hour. So if we have more than one person, you'll have to kind of get together and see if you want to allocate it or however you choose. It's entirely up to you.
I just have a short statement, so whoever.
Okay, well, okay, also, if you have anything written down, please, Teresa's our secretary, and we very dealing with Teresa. They will become part of the actual minutes for our meeting. And of course, subject to all the disclosure rules. And if we go beyond half an hour, we'll have to proceed, but I mean, I'd be glad to stay after the meeting. And the meeting will be closed, but I'm also be glad to stay and certainly listen to you. So who's first?
My comment is directed to Dr. Yumi Pandolfi. I am unsure of the intended result of having Director Potter submit a book report on a white nationalist book was. The real world consequence is that the Mid-Continent Public Library now is losing a great director. Dr. Pandolfi, you are selected to support the function of the library. You have failed this assignment. I would like to remind you of your position on racism as stated in a video posted to Facebook June 2nd, 2020. And I quote, "Racism in every form is wrong. Racism is a sin against humans. Racism is a sin against God." You continue, quote, "There is only one solution to the problem of racism, and his name is Jesus Christ," end quote. Irresistible Revolution by Matthew Wollmeyer is racist propaganda. I am calling on Dr. Yumi Pandolfi to resign from her position on the board in order to repent of her sin and make herself right with her creator, Jesus Christ.
Your name for the
Family.
My name is Catherine Nolan and I live in Independence, Missouri.
Thank you. May I comment?
Is there procedures? I don't know.
Well, I know we can ask questions.
I
Yes,
think
you
it's,
can.
isn't this a public?
Mr. Comments or comments?
We can always write, we have always been able to ask.
Yeah,
You can speak, but I'm not going to answer you because I've said my piece.
The way it's set up right now, we have comments from the visitors, and then we have the trustees' comments.
Right.
So it's one directional and then response in the other direction.
Well, before it's been, we could always ask questions of anyone who came. Any trustee could ask questions. So I'm just wondering when that has changed.
I think if
I don't
the
think
public is offered a certain amount of time to give their comments, I think we should respect that time and not have a give and take, which would go beyond their time for being able to speak. So I think we should respect the time allotted for public comments, and there's time for trustee comments after.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wilson, but I'm just commenting on, since when you were not here, what has been our past. And this has been the past, that if we had questions from anybody, that the board at any time could ask questions, and that would not cut out, like right now, this should not go into their 30-minute time. So anyway, I will save any comment I have until the end, but I just wondered when that rule has changed and why I don't think that is there.
Does anybody have any background as to how it was done?
Yeah, this is public comments. I got another 30 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Is anybody, I mean, are you guys like hungry? I'm not at all. You can get the air fryer if you need to heat up.
Michelle, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry.
Get the air fryer.
Well, thank you, but that did.
Exactly. It's the joys of meetings and vacation. I'm so sorry.
Process and procedure on this?
Well, your procedure doesn't and has never provided for questions from the board to members of the public making comment. I think where in times past there have been questions asked, they are factual questions to understand what the comment was.
Right.
And nothing beyond that. I don't know what you want to ask. I don't know what your comment is. It's just, it's not, the procedure doesn't allow for this to become a debating society.
Right.
Between members of the public, members of the board. But if you have a factual question, such as who wrote a book she's citing, or what is the title of a book she's citing, or what do you mean when you say X? I think that has been where we've allowed questions back and forth before. And that's more based on an awful lot of years sitting in these things than it is as a legal opinion. But your procedure doesn't provide for a back and forth.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So we will have, as actually the procedures do state, we're supposed to have one directional flow of information from our visitors, and then to the trustee comment, we can have responses to it. So do we have another visitor comment? Please.
Yes, my name is Dave Dixon, and I just wanted to appear before you today. I'm a permanent resident of Clay County for the last 3 years. Prior to that, I traveled back and forth to California. And it was interesting listening to a couple of your board members talk about audits versus investigations. I was a criminal investigation for the federal government for 34 years. And I see the negative side of human nature. And it became very clear to me that there were some serious problems in Clay County when I came out here, which have been somewhat resolved at this point based on an election and an auditor's report that took 3 or 4 years to resolve and was finally put out. Pretty much substantiated what the public, a lot of the public in Clay County, believed was, maybe I shouldn't use the word fraud, it sure looked like it to me. But in any case, I wanted to come for my own mental health. I also look at the positive side of human nature, which when you're a criminal investigator, you don't see a lot of. And a couple of you gentlemen that mentioned your audit experience, I was on the criminal investigation side of the Inspector General's office in USDA. And for my own mental health, I like to see when things are working right as opposed to wrong. And it's been my experience, based on the fact I've got a couple of young grandchildren, that I take over to the Woodneath facility as often as I have time for story time, And just to get them familiarized with the computers over there and reading and seeing books, that something was being done right here. And after sitting and listening to you for the last hour or so, it's clear why something is working right here. The interaction of the board, the questioning, thought-provoking discussions lead me to believe that I was right in assuming, based on what I saw at Woodneath, that something is working right here. And I appreciate, as a member of the public, seeing it working right and finding out why it is working right. I was disappointed to hear that your director is retiring. I understand retirement. I was forced out at a certain age from the federal government because I was law enforcement. But all of us come and go. But I can only say it looks like you've had a lot of direction over the last 30 years. I grew up in Independence and St. Joe. I can still remember when I hear the comments about essentially what is a bookmobile. The old word was bookmobile. I can remember when I went to Gene Field in St. Joseph, the bookmobile would come around, and that was one of my favorite things. The other thing I parenthetically mentioned that they used to do a music course in St. Joseph, believe it or not. And they would come in and play symphonies for me. And when I was sixth grade, seventh grade, I can still remember hearing those symphonies. And getting off the subject a little bit, it made me very aware of Kaufman and the treasure you have there. In terms of libraries, I lived in Northern California. I lived in the Bay Area out in San Francisco for many years. And it always frustrated me to see, particularly in the Bay Area of California, how if you lived in certain communities, you had a great library. If you didn't, not so much. Probably goes back to Proposition 13, which capped property taxes. And it kind of set everybody in the Bay Area on their own agenda. And that went for public schools also. Some were really good. Most were not so good. And the beauty of California in the 60s was a paradise, and that has been kind of gone the wrong way over a number of years. In some ways, particularly in the public schools, we still have the world's great schools of higher education. With that said, I would just like to say again, the facilities, and I'm not just talking the physical facilities, that Woodneath facility is beyond belief. The dedication of the staff up there when I take my little grandchildren to a book reading or any type of activity is just magnificent. You are all to be commended for what you have here. I recommend that you keep it. Going back to California, they had it in the 60s and 70s in California. They had it in the 80s when I first moved there. But I've seen a lot of the public facilities being cut back. It's no longer so much of a golden state, although I still miss it very much. You have something really precious here. With that said, I am a believer in what the public libraries do. They teach, they give our children access to the books which seed their entire life for reading, and most importantly, critical thinking. If we lose what our public library gives us here in Jackson, Clay, and Platte County, I feel very strongly it would be a terrible thing to see it diminished. So again, I just want to be the bearer of my own view of what you have here. It's a treasure. From listening to your discussion here today, it's obvious that you board members intend to keep it. So I just wanted to say that to you. Thank you. I appreciate having been able to come and listen to your discussion and carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't sign up.
We only had two
Yes.
presenters. Okay, thank you both for sharing your thoughts.
Oh,
And
And I did want to point out that there is a nice archive in visitors' comments in board docs.
Oh,
So
okay.
several
Yes.
folks did submit things to, by nice, I mean sizable, is what I mean.
And you can see yourself on YouTube in about an hour. Okay, announcements.
Really just a few, of course, on the 18th, I think it's Friday, if I'm not mistaken, 9 a.m., the Blue Ridge rededication ceremony. So that's going to be exciting, and hopefully a few of you can get out for that. Next week is the Public Library Association Conference in Portland that I've already mentioned. Dustin and I are presenting, and immediately Katina sent a note to me and said, I'm presenting too. So I forgot, Katina is presenting on data. I know that's a big surprise, but there'll be a handful of us. Usually not the full. It's not the full cohort. There'll be a small group of us out of Portland. The building committee right now is scheduled for March the 24th, but I'm going to double check with everybody on that because I will still be in Portland. We'll have to see if we want to carry on with several people. Finance committee is scheduled for April 7th. Personnel committee, April 13th. April 17th, the libraries will be closed. The libraries that have Sunday hours, which are most of them now, will be closed on April 17th. And then there will be the board meeting on April the 19th. Teresa, we decided there would be technology on the 18th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So technology committee as well on the 18th, and then board meeting on the 19th. So that's what I know.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Trustee comments. I'd just like to pick up on something you mentioned about the libraries being sometimes not as well supported in certain communities. One thing here in this system, we're all representatives from 3 separate counties. I represent Clay, and of course we're all 12 from each. But one thing I think that I've noticed in my relatively short time on the board is that there's a real sense of where we can get the presence of a library in areas that really desperately need a library. If you look at the map up there, there's some areas that are not south of the plaza. And sometimes the library that's sponsored by this library district is often provides the heart for that community in many cases, just by having the physical space there for people to gather, and organizations, little business groups and hobby groups and everything. And it's really quite a wonderful thing. And that's in areas that otherwise independently could not afford that. So we're doing exactly what you mentioned, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, I'm done. Who's next? Trustee comments?
Go ahead.
I'll be brief because I've spoken far too much tonight. Steve said it in passing. I really want to encourage you to go to the Blue Ridge opening. If you want to understand how a big library system we are and how we serve a variety of different communities, this is an experience I would encourage you to have. If you've not been there, some of you may have, but it is really one of our most important library branches that we have that serves the children in a school district that is currently unaccredited, and we're a valuable presence in that community. And so I would just encourage you to take the time. I think sometimes I love Woodneath and we go visit the big libraries, but it's important to understand what a library means in Lone Jack. And if you want to understand what a library means in a particular community, and if you have the time, please show up on Friday. It would be good. Happy to buy your coffee. We don't have a coffee shop there, but I'm happy to buy your coffee anyway.
What is this one?
Is it?
Did I miss that?
Yeah, it is.
That's Friday. Good time.
Friday.
9 o'clock.
I can send a reminder out about that if you like.
I guess I'll say something. Yeah, I just want to thank the visitors for coming out and expressing your opinions, because that means a lot to us. And I also want to say that, serving on the library board is not an easy thing to do. And just so you know that we are, at least Platt and Clay, we are not elected, but we are appointed by elected officials, by our commissioners. And some of the stances we take, I'll speak for myself personally, and I know every board member, I don't believe anyone here is racist. I don't believe anyone here is against any diversity, including anybody. Equality. I think we have a very good policy. I believe it's number 301, that we are an equal opportunity employer. We do not discriminate. It is not any of our intentions to discriminate against anyone. So I'm a woman, obviously, and part Hispanic. So I don't believe in discriminating, and I know no one else does here. I also know that it's difficult that to be able to serve the public. We have a very diverse population in all of our counties. And so I guess I just, ask the public for your grace and for your prayers. And that right now we really do need the wisdom of Solomon to be able to set policies that are fair to the public. At the same time, there's many of us that are concerned about children, about displays that maybe are not appropriate for certain children to see, about even some books that are not appropriate. No one here, especially myself, we're not against banning books. But there also is I'm seeing a lot of push from a vocal part of the public who is saying we want diversity, equity, and inclusion, meaning we want you to do what we say. And so that makes it very difficult for us because we do want to be fair. We do want this to be a public library system to serve all people. So I guess I'm just saying that it's difficult what we're trying to do. And I do appreciate the benefit of the doubt that if you talk to any of us as individuals, we are not here as racists. We are not here as someone against diversity, that we want to push people down. That's not true at all. So that said, I just thank you guys for coming out and sharing your opinions.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Move for adjournment.
All in favor of adjourning? Saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? I abstain.